What's up, y'all? Y'all are listening to Living Corporate's flagship podcast. If you didn't know, Living Corporate helps organizations build employee engagement and market trust through data analytics and data transformation, our e-learning platform, and brand marketing storytelling. We're so excited for you to be here today. The conversation you're about to hear is going to connect the dots between employee experience and go-to-market effectiveness. If you're not ready, get ready. Here we go. Sarah Morgan, welcome back to Living Corporate.
Thank you for having me back. Let's get into some good trouble today.
Let's get into some good trouble. Listen, we talked offline, and I was saying, look, you and I have known each other now for several years. It's kind of spooky how time just kind of floats on by.
Yeah.
Today, I just want to talk about the landscape of human resources. And
cool.
and of course, human resources at the intersection of experience. And I think the first obvious question I just have is, from your vantage point, what are the biggest shifts you're seeing in how employees define a good workplace in 2025? And then what do you see, what changes do you see, if any, in how human resources leaders are being asked to respond?
So here's what's interesting. I don't know if this is a controversial take or not, but I don't think it's shifting. I think that people want the same thing from their workplaces now that they've always wanted. I think technology shifts, right? Who's in charge and what they're doing shifts. But I think the human relationship with work doesn't really shift. And so ultimately, when we are working, we want fair and equitable pay that matches the current cost of living. And I think that's true whether you go back 200 years or today. I think we want paid and protected time off for the stuff of life, right? Whether that's illness, a family emergency, whatever that might be. I think we want organizations to hold accountability around norms of respect, like respect me as a human, treat me as a human, worthy of dignity in the workplace. I think that's always been true. I think that's always going to be true. And I think people want to feel proud of the place that they work. They want to flex a little bit. And so that's where things like benefits and perks and swag, comes into play. I want to wear this t-shirt that they gave me and feel good when I go into the supermarket and people be like, you work there? Yeah, child, I work here. I want to flex a little bit. I want to be able to go get my oil changed and be like, I'm an employee of blah, 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 and get that 20% off. And be like, yeah, I want to flex a little bit. And I think that's true whether you go back hundreds of years or whether you go back to yesterday. I think that's always going to be true. And so what HR should be trying to do, in as far as the powers that be in their organizations will let them, is make that so for the people who work there and consistently remind the leadership that this is what people want, this is what people need to thrive and do their best work. Let's keep giving it to them.
I agree that the framing or the premise that the employee has some radically different expectation of 2025 is, I think that's like a corporatized question. Because the corporate frame is meant to put the onus on the individual.
Yeah,
and
because
almost
corporations don't want to take it's the constant like gaslight
Mhm,
of the work relationship.
mhm,
And we see it in gender, and we see it in race, and we see it in capitalism, that the people without power are somehow more responsible for the goings on and the outcomes and their own feelings about their treatment, right? If only you did this, we would treat you better. If only you behaved this way, we would treat you better. We say the same thing to people of color. We say the same thing to women. We say the same thing to our brothers and sisters in the LGBTQ plus community. It's a gaslight, and we have to stop pretending like it's something else. This is capitalisming, right? Like this is it being what
no,
it was
100%.
always designed to be.
I love that we're having this conversation in this context because one, obviously I agree. When I think about like the last probably 2.5, 3 years living corporate, just
Mm-hmm.
interrogating like, okay, what does experience really mean? And like, we can't talk about these topics as if they're just agnostic or exclusive from corporate executive responsibility or accountability,
Yes.
right? Like,
Yes.
it's it's just not possible or fair or reasonable or logical to do so. What I believe we're in this space now where employee expectations really haven't changed since, to your point, hundreds of years, like the framing that you
Mm-hmm.
gave. But when I think about like the vocal, like I don't think that employees are retreating from the very bold expectations they set during the pandemic, which is
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking
No,
for
not at
remote
all.
hybrid experiences. I'm looking for some of the things that have always been there. I'm looking for equitable pay, but I'm also looking for enriching experiences that
Mm-hmm.
will accommodate my lifestyle or my life stage as a caregiver or a
Mm-hmm.
parent or whatever. What has changed, and I think like during that season, we saw ever rising resentment from the corporate elite class,
For
executive
sure.
leadership class to say, hey, these employees can't just keep on making demands. We saw the recruiter class. There was growing frustration in terms of just
Mm-hmm.
how prospective talent was acting
Mm-hmm.
during like and looking for a job. Like this idea of they just weren't as desperate. They weren't desperate in
Yeah.
the same ways,
Yeah.
and they weren't willing to undercut and undersell themselves or give away their labor for free in the same ways.
Yep.
And I remember, I mean, there were people on the record. Like there's a video of a man, I believe he's from Australia, but he said, we're going to need to hurt them.
Yeah.
We're going to need to hurt employees to kind of put them back in their place.
Yeah, it's very like The Empire Strikes Back, like right,
Hmm.
like it's like, oh, we were down for a second, but haha, we back up and we are going to take revenge instead of we're going to take the feedback and adjust. And like we went through this pandemic experience, this very difficult time, and we learned lessons from that. We learned life lessons from that. We learned business lessons from that, and we're going to take all that knowledge and build something different for the future. Take this momentum that we gained and build something different for the future. And but instead we're like, nope, we're gonna go back to the way things were. Never mind that everything on earth is more expensive than it was when all of this started. Never mind that people are still sick and suffering. Nah, pish posh. We're gonna go back as quickly as possible to the way things were because it's what worked best for us. It made us comfortable. It made us wealthy. We don't want to give that up. We don't want to share. Let's get back to that as quickly as we can. And if you don't like it, we're going to make an example out of you.
Yeah.
That's very much how it feels.
100%. As I think about this moment, and it's interesting the way you're talking about like you're talking about these systems, in a way that I have to ask this follow-up question, which is, and I guess let me give some preface. So, I'm looking on LinkedIn and I see HR professionals getting really offended when there's posts like HR is here to serve the company. HR isn't your friend. I've seen like some really long posts of people genuinely like HR professionals, executives offended at the notion that they are, in fact, there to support the company that they work for. And their first responsibility and accountability is the company. I think my first question to you is like, how do you feel about that sentiment? Do you think that's something that is like an offensive or egregious thing to say?
No, not at all. No, not at all. I think back to when I first started blogging 2010, 2011. And I can remember writing this, so it's out there, quote me, that I said, my responsibility to HR is to protect the company by protecting the people. But my first responsibility is to that company. And sometimes that is going to mean not protecting some people. That is going to mean not siding with my feeling about it in favor of what is going to mitigate liability best for the company. And I accepted that pretty early on in my career. And for a very long time, I wasn't even too uncomfortable about it. That switched for me with the internal dialogue in workplaces around Trayvon Martin. That's when it came to a head for me. And then everything that happened after that just radicalized me more and more and more, to the point where now I can be very free and open in saying HR is not your friend. The HR may be friendly. HR may be full of good people who mean well. But at the end of the day, we're still a part of a capitalistic system that is designed to control, command, arguably oppress, and keep people in a very defined, narrow box of what they can and cannot do. And that's the system that we've designed and accepted as the way within our society. And our function was created because laws came about that told companies that you have to treat people better than this. And so then they were like, all right, well, we got to have somebody to make sure that we're compliant. And that's what HR was born from. Businesses didn't even want us, right? Like we were born because they were like, damn it, the government said we got to pay people a minimum wage. Somebody has to make sure that we're doing that. Okay, little lady that answers the phone, you check these numbers and make sure that everybody's getting paid this minimum wage. The government says people can't work more than X hours per day or per week without overtime. All right, then, guess we got to do that. Here, little lady, and I'm saying little lady on purpose, right? Because most of your human resources people are women. Most of us, and again, so now you're taking this person from this marginalized background, this disempowered identity, and putting them in charge of the thing that the business didn't want to do in the first place, and then being like, why is it not working? Come on, y'all. Like, this is what it is. And so when we accept that as the reality of the history of how human resources personnel people ops, whatever we calling it today, when we accept that that's our origin, and that we have and how we have evolved from there, then we're not surprised or taken aback or insulted when people go on LinkedIn and say HR is not your friend, because we know. It's not a surprise to me that people feel that way. I 100% know that there are times in my working life where I have absolutely shitted on people because the company required me to do so. Absolute. I know it. I know that there are people out there whose lives were not changed for the better because of news I had to deliver to them, because the company, that's what the company decided, and I was the mouthpiece for that. I absolutely know that. And I'm not going to pretend like that's not true, like I didn't do it. I'm not even going to front like in the moment that I did it under duress. So I think we have to own the fullness of that, and then make a decision of like, am I going to continue to still work this way? Or am I going to say, I hold myself accountable for the decisions that I made and say, I'm not going to do that no more. And for me, that's how it worked out. For me, I was able to say, I don't want to work like that anymore. And every choice that I've made since then about how I operate in my work day to day, what I position my quote unquote brand as out into the world, and how I allow myself to be used to activate it, against people in the workplace, is either I know I am participating in this and I'm good with it, or I'm not participating in this, y'all get somebody else to do it. And if that means I lose my job or I lose favor, that quote unquote seat at the table all right, then. Shirley Chisholm said, bring a folding chair. And I think she said, bring a folding chair, not so that you could sit down, but so that you could get up. Like, because folding chairs are mobile. So you sit down at this table and they on some foolishness, take your folding chair, fold that thing up, put it back in the bag, go find you another table. Don't just sit there with the scraps and the unseasoned food that's being served to you. Fold that chair up. Folding chairs are mobile. Take it with you. Go somewhere else. There is somewhere. There is a space for you, and you don't have to compromise your integrity and your legacy in order to have impact. And that's the thing that I realized, and I'm good with the decisions I made before, and I recognize why I made them. I recognize the internalized capitalism that led me to make those decisions and be okay with making those decisions at the time. I regret that I wasn't smarter, but I accept that that's where I was at the time. I'm at peace with that. And now I'm going to move different. I know better. I do better. That's it.
It's just such an honest and self-aware position and posture. And I hope that HR professionals listening to this, just professionals in general listening to this, can take that. There's such a... there's like this oversensitivity and defensiveness. Frankly, I believe is projection. But I'm not a psychologist, so I don't know. Of folks who, okay, look, you can't have it both ways. If you are Mr. or Mrs. Equity, Fairness for All, advocate, and voice for those in the margins, okay. Then when your corporate overlords come and tell you to put this person on a PIP who you don't have documentation for, or tell you to conduct a layoff that is predominantly black and brown of people, again, who have no track record of actually doing anything, of no poor performance, and you're not going to give them a proper severance. When when you're being told to get a speaker for your event, but you don't have any budget,
Mm-hmm.
those moments you have an opportunity to speak up. And if you're not going to speak up, then okay. But
Mm-hmm.
recognize that you're reinforcing and proving the point
Yes.
that you are not an activist.
Yes.
You are a corporate leader
Yeah.
following the command and direction of other corporate capitalist executives. And your function and job is to execute against their pleasure and good and will. And your overarching function in a people ops context is to mitigate risk.
Yes.
And risk is the funny thing about like even the idea of risk mitigation. Risk is really kind of in the eye of the beholder, right?
Yeah.
So it's the risk that the people in charge have determined are risks, not
It's risk.
not the risks that you believe are risks, and that's your job. So go
Mm-hmm.
do your job. You know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
I think that I believe that as I look at and I talk to on the record, off the record, folks across the generational spectrum, right? So
Mm-hmm.
there is a disillusionment that's happened with work, and I don't know what the future of work looks like when the veneer of integrity and
Mm-hmm.
employee forward, employee focus, employee first, when all those different things about like doing the right thing, we do the right thing. Like I remember when I graduated from college, like every company that I worked at or that I was looking to work at, well, they had core values. And like one of the
Mm-hmm.
always in the core values, it was something around we do what's right before we try to talk about whatever else. We're gonna do what's
Mm-hmm.
right first. Like that was a huge thing.
Yeah.
A
But
hu-
right for who?
but
But right for who? Yeah.
And but listen though, but to your point though, right? When you said earlier about you go to the store and somebody you have a shirt on. I remember when Google was a really exciting place to work.
Mm-hmm.
Like I remember when if you say you worked at Microsoft, like that was really exciting. Like, oh my
Mm-hmm.
gosh, like you work at you work at Nike, you work at these brands that were seen again outside looking in, were seen as like places where good people do good stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
And
so
now those same places you say you work there and people are like, my condolences. Are you looking?
yeah,
You
you get
should
laid
send
off.
me your resume.
So you just laid off
Yeah.
from 18,000 people. Are you okay?
Right.
So
Are you okay? Yeah.
and so I get concerned, right, about like
Yeah.
what does this future hold when and what is the restoration process? Is there a restoration process? Like what happens? Because I don't know how you paint that fence again.
I don't know that there is a restoration process. And you and I have talked about this before. When what was helpful for me during the height of the pandemic, as a person who has anxiety disorder and will spiral out very easily, what helps me is precedent, right?
Hmm.
So I was like, well, surely, like this isn't our first pandemic. Surely there have to be some similarities between what happened 100 years ago and what happened now. Certainly, technology is advanced and all those things, but like there has to be a story, a thread that connects all of this. And so I started reading about the pandemic of the 1920s, 30s, and what I realized is that we did the same things. Same things, Zach, same things, right? We went into shutdown, came out too early. Everybody got sick again, had to shut down some more. Then everybody was working with masks. Now their version of masks was just basically like a handkerchief or, ripped piece of fabric tied around your face. But people working in masks, moving about in masks, we did that. And then herd immunity, because they didn't really have immunization as quickly as we did. So herd immunity set in faster back then than it did with us. Ours was accelerated because of vaccinations. They went through herd immunity. And then it was like, all right, life is starting to feel normal again. The people wanted to exhale and recover and have the opportunity to mourn what had been lost, the people, the ways of living, all of that. The businesses that had lost profitability during that time was like, oh no, we got to get back to work. We got to move faster. We got to move, we got to move. We got to go. We got to make this money. And the people were like, nah. And that's how we ended up with the Industrial Revolution of the 30s and 40s that led to the minimum wage, the overtime laws, the working hours and shifts having to be defined from the outset, that you just can't have somebody work from sunup till sundown and pay them the same thing that you would pay them if they only worked for 3 or 4 hours. Like, that's how all of that law came about. And businesses hated it. It took strikes. It took walkouts. It took mass protests. It took the burning of things. It took all of that to get us to a place where we had laws as a society, federal laws across the United States that said little kids can't work in factories no more. Like, that's who we were. We were so hell bent, because once upon a time it was really like agriculture, which is why we have the school year that we have, because of harvest season. The kids were needed on the farms of their families to work.
Mm-hmm.
As we became more industrialized, that was less necessary, so kids were in school for longer periods.
Mm-hmm.
When we came out of the pandemic, they wanted that money so bad that they were like, them kids don't need to go back to school. They already missed what they missed. Come on in this factory and do this thing.
Mm-hmm.
We were crazy about redeeming this profit. And fast forward 100 years, we are coming on the backside of the COVID-19 pandemic, and looky. This is what we're doing. Right. And they did the same things that we did in terms of vilifying immigrants and vilifying people of color and all the stuff. It's all right there.
Yeah. We have the playbook. We've seen it before.
We have the playbook. We have seen this. But ultimately, it took pockets of the marginalized to rise up in their respective areas. And ultimately, all of those factions coming together to their representatives and demanding change that made it happen. And I believe that we are starting to see that now, because what people want more than anything at this point is peace and ease. Mm-hmm. Right. I think that's a lot of like what we're seeing with the usage of AI, the increase in automation. Like, I think all of that is coming from people needing more ease in the work that they do. And the problem is, again, capitalism taking those things and turning it on the people. Like, how dare you want peace and ease? How dare you want the time? So, all right, you want time off? Well, guess what? I'm gonna build a robot to take your job. You can have all the time you want.
It's such an interesting like dual. Well, it's not. It's to say it's a dual-edged sword is also wrong, because it's not really. It's really somebody. Mm-hmm. It's really somebody taking like going from digging with their hands to digging with a plow. And then someone getting mad and then using that plow to hurt you. Because you're right. Like, there's a part of me in my impatience and like less gracious moments where I say, man, why are people so dumb? AI is making us dumber. It's making us lazy. At the same time, I love your framing, because people are overworked and they're looking for as much ease as they're looking for whatever respite they can find in their day and their time. And so, as opposed to me Googling and trying to write and then drafting and then rewriting and writing this email to Ted about this TPS report, I'm going to go into ChatGPT. I'm going to outline the context of what I need. Mm-hmm. I'm going to press enter. I'm going to look at it. I'm going to say, okay, hey, make it a little nicer. Add this number. And then I'm going to copy and paste that. And it's a symptom of like the usage of AI, the usage of generative AI and the ways that we're seeing it used. And for context, like, look, I Live in Corporate is working on a demystifying AI series, as you and I are having this conversation, because I do think AI has its benefits, but I also believe AI is like shamefully overblown in its capability. It has proven documented as being harmful to the environment, that disparately impacts Black and brown communities. It's also growing more expensive while degrading in fidelity. So while I believe it has its functions and uses, I don't believe it's all for it's going to save the world. I think it's actually I think it's ruining the world. But for the sake of this conversation, like, people are just looking for any point of help that they can, and frankly, it's 2025. Like, what is the function of all this technology if it isn't to make our lives easier? Like, why are we're still going to work the same that we was working in 1983 or
1943? Like, you still want us to work in those same ways with all that we had? Like, what? Huh?
Like, it don't even make sense. So it's like even like all this pressure to like return to office. It's like, but hold on, ain't they billion-dollar companies that make virtual meetings possible? Why do I need to be in a physical office? Now, again, if you ask me to conduct open heart surgery, yes, I need to be there.
Well, here's the thing, like, and I think it's like 70 to 80% of jobs, period, cannot be conducted outside of the space that the work needs to happen. Whether you're a nurse, a doctor, a barista, there are some jobs that simply cannot be performed, that exist, that have to exist, that will continue to exist, that cannot be performed in a hybrid, remote manner. But for those that can, the pressure to return fully to the office and not work hybrid is once again foolish, short-sighted, and all based in capitalism, to the point that local governments are now incentivizing businesses to return to their offices because of the impact on sub-economy. The dry cleaners. I ain't been to a dry cleaner since 2019. Why? Because I work from home. These yoga pants ain't got to go to the dry cleaners, okay? They ain't got these t-shirts. These t-shirts ain't got to go.
Not today.
To the dry cleaner. Them dresses got to go. Them skirts and suits got to go. Not these clothes. So that's a sub-econ. The places that thrived on happy hour, the places that thrived on lunch crowds, right? Like, all of that sub-economy is suffering because more people are working remote and hybrid. So we're going to push people. The local governments are pushing and incentivizing businesses to reopen their big downtown conglomerate offices and so forth, so that people can start using the dry cleaners and the little luncheria and all of those sorts of, the happy hour at the little tavern on the corner again, instead of demanding that those businesses pivot and use their ingenuity to figure out a way to allow their businesses to continue to thrive the way that you would ask pretty much any other business to continue to thrive.
Right.
Like, how many times have you and I pivoted in our small business?
I mean, you got to make it happen. And I mean,
right.
Like, if you've had like a little delicatessen on the corner for the past 50 years, hey man, it might be time for you to figure out how to make a ghost kitchen or a delivery service, or sell a couple cookbooks, sell a brick. I don't know. You got to figure it out.
Figure it out.
You got to figure it out.
Figure it out.
So I think the other thing, as I think about this current moment, is I keep my eyes on like the major institutions. I want to and the older I get, I realize that like legacy institutions are legacy for a reason, right? So meaning like they are plugged into legacy donors, legacy support. And legacy, and that in the corporate legacy is sustained by maintaining the status quo and appealing to those who control the most on the board. I don't know if I appreciated that in the same ways when I was younger, but I'm starting to appreciate it more now. And so I'm curious to, with that being said, I'm curious to get your perspective on Society of Human Resource Management National Branch.
Oh.
And I ask, and this is not to like shoot at Johnny Taylor or like say the obvious things about how like they just about the all lives mattering of their national brand. I'm curious, like when you look at the critiques of the SHRM national office, like I'm on record, right? Like I've been quoted in HR Dive and other places.
Me too.
Yeah, like
all the places.
SHRM national is like the police of corporate America. Like they just are really here to serve the state. Like they're going to reinforce whatever it is, they're going to walk lock in step with that, and they're gonna try to frame it and guss it up like it's something that it ain't. But it is what it is. It is. But at the same time, I see people on LinkedIn and other places have a sentiment like, if you have a SHRM certification, I can't trust you at all. And I was speaking to a really good friend of mine who's also a mentor, but a friend first, and a client, doggone. And we were talking about like the types of critique against SHRM. When you start making those type of assessments, I believe they're dangerous because all of the folks on the margins, Black folks, women, queer folks, etc., disabled folks, who get these certifications to help them get a job that they have to survive. And so I ramble with this huge thing to ask the question of what do you think it means to be a responsible critic of SHRM National? What does that look like to you?
I think you're exactly right. SHRM has been and continues to be the credential, right? Like the source that corporations look to for validity of our profession. SHRM said it. SHRM said this, and that's what should be happening for a lot of organizations. That's true. There was a time in my career where I was trying to move out of manager into director's roles with a whole ass master's degree and couldn't do it because I was not certified. And leaders in organizations had been, your CEOs, your CFOs, CO, though that C-suite had been indoctrinated to believe that qualified, good HR professionals had their certification. And if they didn't, they were not trained to protect your organization in the ways that it would need. And that sunk in. And a lot of that has not changed. And so because there is still the SHRM national, and then there are the state and local level structures, to me, it's very similar to government, where you have to take each level of it as it comes to you. I see and have always seen, and imagine I will continue to see, great work coming out of local SHRM chapters, state level conferences. I have touted for years about like skip SHRM National, go to the local conferences, if you can't go to your state, go to a neighboring state. right? Go to support your state and local SHRM efforts, because that's where the real conversation, the real work, the real support is happening. But I think it would be a mistake for us to completely discredit the certification process and the learning that comes along with that, because for a lot of professionals, most people in the HR profession do not go to school and get a degree to be an HR professional. Most of us stumble into it from some other function.
Mm-hmm.
We were the receptionist, we were the office manager, we were the finance person in a small organization, and they just threw HR stuff on top of us to give us quote unquote more to do.
Mm-hmm.
And for that individual to take the time to sit down, whether they take the course, whether they read the materials and study on their own, to certify themselves and fortify their knowledge so that they can move about in their profession to be better, we can't be mad at that. We can't be mad
No.
at that. And we should not discredit that just because we're unhappy with the ways that the national leadership of the organization is moving. And I would never have not ever advocated for that. For me at this point in my career and what I need, the certification doesn't serve me. So I let it go, because
Same.
going to these, conferences and things in order to keep hearing these messages to get my recertification, it just wasn't serving me for the work that I was doing. But I know that that's not true for everyone. And for those who it serves, utilize that. And if it's the thing between you getting the job and not getting the job, or getting your bag and not getting your bag, go get your bag. Go go do what you have to do to get to the place that you need to be to affect the change that you want to affect. I'm never going to be mad at someone for doing that. I'm not going to shame or discredit that in any way. It is important. It's still important.
I want to have a really real talk moment here too. Is this also is kind of like the example of when like white allies and like white well-meaning liberals like overstep and talk too much. Like,
True.
So like you think about the HR space, excuse me, predominantly white women. But when you talk about like black folks who typically matriculate into any type of executive leadership position, if it's not hyper technical, it's oftentimes in like HR or DEI or people ops and stuff. Like that's not rare at all. And and I think it's important when you make critiques about whatever it is, hey, this institution, this, that, and the third is like, so on one side, be thoughtful and be intersectional in your critique and analysis before you jump online or jump on a podcast mic or whatever the case is. And then two, I would say, for those who are on the margins, don't be a crash test dummy.
For sure.
Right? Like just regurgitating nonsense, because the reality is the person who's probably wagging their finger and like wildly critiquing an organization with no nuance or like specificity, they have more privileges than you. So that person might be able to get a job without that certification. Whereas you having a certification might be the tiebreaker that forces them to give you an opportunity. Right.
I could not agree more. And if you look at the people who are going so hard about SHRM being this, whack, useless thing that nobody should be affiliated with, they look a certain way.
Yeah, and they're also doing well.
And they've reached a certain stature where they have the privilege to be able to do those things that many of us do not. You and I have the privilege because we've reached spaces in our career on our journey where it block me. I don't care. Like I am John C. Taylor blocked me long time ago. I wear it as a badge of, as a badge of honor. I don't care. It does not matter to me. It does not affect me being able to get gigs, do things, have my platform. But that is not true for everyone. And I'm not, and if that's not true for you, I'm not mad at you for making the decisions that you have to make. And I hope that when you get to the place where that's not true for you anymore, that you can acknowledge that and speak whatever your truth is.
Yeah.
But I'm not asking anybody to sacrifice themselves for my good graces or the, some sort of like perpetual thing that makes you better than something else. As Black and brown people, we can't afford that. We never could. So we have always had to play some kind of game in order to keep that balance. And though the times have changed, the game has not.
Mm-hmm.
And we do a disservice to ourselves and to one another when we don't acknowledge that and leave space for that and see each other where we are. And if people like you and I who have the opportunity to who don't have to worry about what happens to us because we don't have a certification or because we speak out against the way that the larger HR society moves, we got to make sure that we reach back to those who are still in the mix of that, struggling with the transitions that we've already made and help. That's what we do. But if you're just pontificating because you have a following and and you're not invested and there's no consequence for you either way, okay.
Right. And I think, 100%. I mean, we just got to be thoughtful and mindful, everybody, in terms of what it is we're saying, how we're saying it,
mm-hmm.
and who we're speaking to when we say whatever it is we're saying. Like we have all these communication tools. Put a at on that next time. Be thoughtful. Something something as we wrap up, because earlier we were talking about AI, and it's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I lost it at the time, but I want to come back to this. And I think, like I said, I want to give you the floor. And give you the floor, and then we'll wrap it up. Sarah, is generative AI has a space and a focus to really enrich employee experience. I really do believe that. I believe it also has a space and opportunity to enrich customer experience. What I don't believe it can do is replace employee experience.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So like the situations that we have right now with these like really odd moments, right? I think there was a national news recently where an AI impersonated Marco Rubio and like made a bunch of calls to
scary stuff.
Diplomats and stuff. You got today, the day of our recording, the CEO of Twitter stepped down just a few moments ago because Grok their AI turned into a Nazi. And then it's just, there's all sorts of things happening with this technology that we don't fully understand. A lot of it is snake oil. I am hopeful that as we talk about this future of work, that we have some sort of awakening or revolution that puts power back into the workers' hands, not just for the sake of survival. Because at this point, it's a great example of how workplace equity isn't just a really novel concept. It is critical for our collective continuance as a species, right? As a society. You have these technocrats out there. Peter Thiel recently was asked, do you think humanity should continue? And it's funny because like people hail Peter Thiel as his genius. I've yet to hear him complete a complete sentence. I have yet to hear him say one word, another word, and then and stop. And I understand what he said.
I get that.
It's crazy. They asked him, do you think humanity should continue? And he literally was like, I can't.
Okay.
But there's a huge, I don't believe he is the majority. And I believe that we're going to have to imagine, not just imagine like and pontificate. We have to get our hands active in building the future of work that we need. Because right now it's not it.
True. I'm reminded of the movie Hidden Figures whenever we talk about AI and automation and the impact that it's going to have on work. And I think about Dorothy's character, Dorothy Vaughn, the real person portrayed by Octavia Spencer in the film. And when she caught the tea that they were going to automate what they were going to use computers to automate what her team was doing, she went before anybody else could, studied those computers, studied how the inner workings of how they were using, books that she was able to get from work, and then also things that she found in her local library. Shout out to the libraries. And she figured out what was needed to operate those computers and began to imagine what would come after that, right? So it's not just about what's next, but also what's after that. And then once she figured it out, on the side, she slowly started training her people so that the day those computers came, instead of getting the layoff, her team all got promotions because they was the only ones in the building who were ready for what's next. So I think this time is a call for us to start studying the ways that AI and automation, what's coming, right? What's coming at us, to make sure that we are prepared for what's next. And we begin to imagine and influence what's after that, so that when it comes fully, we are able to just pick up our stuff and go to the next thing without being displaced. And this is a time for us to not hoard knowledge, particularly those of us in the margins, to not hoard knowledge from one another, but to put each other up on game of this is what's coming. Here is what we need to do to get prepared. There are content creators out there that are doing that. Kezia Williams, Kezia. She's you may see her as Dr. Keys or Kezia W on Instagram, is one that immediately comes to mind, that's been talking this talk and putting great content out there to teach people in terms of free YouTube, and then also affordable actual courses that folks can take to learn more about this kind of stuff, because we need it. We're not going to survive without that. And also, you mentioned like HR and itself, and then consumers. I feel like we are really at a crossroads of deciding like how we are going to allow ourselves to be led in this moment. We can either let ourselves be led to a slaughter where we're at the mercy of corporate decision makers, or we can start to put our collective buying power together. And we're seeing that in terms of boycotts and things like that within the consumer community. That has to continue. And within HR, I think we're seeing that with people making the decision to leave roles where they're not respected and where it's clear the organization is not about a sense of belonging and inclusion for its people, whatever you call it. If whether you call it that formally or not, whether you double down on your commitments to DEIB or not, are you still doing the things? And when that's not the case, HR people have to stay in integrity, because otherwise what happens is we enable the behavior by being there. We are protecting corporations from the natural consequences of their poor behavior. And that is the definition of codependence. So which anybody would tell you, codependence is a horrible thing. I am an innate, like if I had a family member who was on drugs and I was creating a circumstance that made access to money and drugs or alcohol or whatever, or, whatever your addiction of choice, and I made it easier for them, I'm now the problem.
Right.
And so when we don't pay people fairly, when we, like you mentioned earlier, terminate people without proper warnings and documentation and opportunity to improve, and we find a way around, around that requirement we are enabling all of that behavior. And and I'm not saying, I'm not pulling a Beyonce and saying, quit your job. No, but you might want to ease on the brake a little bit of how much protection that you actually give and how long you allow yourself to be a part of that by your actual presence inside the organization. Because sometimes, and I can say this because it's happened to me, sometimes the people are waiting for you to quit. Sometimes, like, we talked about, HR ain't your friend. There are good HR people out there.
For real.
Who are holding it down for the people, and the people trust them. And so in that trust, the people are saying, if Zach is still here, Sarah's still here, can't be that bad.
That's exactly what they think. Yeah.
Because if it was, they would leave.
Because I know they would leave because they have integrity.
They would leave because they have integrity. Look how hard they work. Look at all that they do to make sure that our workplace is straight, that we're straight. So if they're still here, can't be that bad. You're the barrier. So we have to recognize that, and we have to make the decision. Like we said before, good sister Shirley Chisholm, we got to pick that chair up, fold that thing up, put it in the bag, and figure out your next move. And sometimes that next move might be a moment where you gotta walk some dogs, deliver some food while you figure some things out. But trust and believe, I've lived it. Zach has lived it. There is a path and there is a better way. And if you lean into your support system, if you trust yourself, if you make a plan, it's possible. It's possible.
Several mic drops from Sarah Morgan, speaker, executive leader, podcaster, thought leader, influencer, all around dope person. Soon to be case study with Vivo Agency, but we'll do a testimonial podcast another time. Okay.
Yeah.
Sarah, it's been a pleasure. Where can people find you?
I'm most active on LinkedIn, Sarah Morgan. You can also find me, The Buzz on HR, I'm on Threads and I'm on Instagram. I've pretty much given up. I'm on all the other ones too. Don't follow me there. I ain't saying nothing. But those two, you can find me and connect and chat. I look forward to hearing from you.
Love it. Sarah, much love to you. Appreciation to you. We will talk to you soon.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Peace.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Okay, great.
Living Corporate is a podcast by Living Corporate LLC. Our logo was designed by David Dawkins. Our theme music was produced by Ken Brown. Additional music production by Antoine Franklin for Musical Elevation. Post-production is handled by Jeremy Jackson. Got a topic suggestion? Email us at livingcorporatepodcast@gmail.com. You can find us online on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and living-corporate.com. Thanks for listening. Stay tuned.